All right, so into a large bowl, you're gonna add 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder, which is roughly 1/3 of a cup. Then you're gonna add 1/3 of a cup of oats, followed by 2 tablespoons of any nut butter. Here I'm using peanut butter, but you can of course use a cashew, an almond butter, whatever you have on hand will work. Next, you're gonna add 1/2 of a teaspoon of cake batter extract. Then you're just gonna give this a good mix as best as you can. As you can see, it needs a little bit of liquid added to it, so you're just gonna do a splash of any milk of choice, and give that a good mix. After mixing it for a little bit, it's gonna start to get tougher and stickier to mix, and once it starts to get really tough, that's when you know it's about ready to scoop. After you lay out some parchment paper, you can then use a cookie scoop and just scoop out some balls. It'll scoop out roughly 5 balls. Here I'm just adding some coconut oil spray to my hands before I roll them so that they don't stick all over my hands. And then one at a time, roll each of those 5 balls. Into a small bowl, you will then add some sugar-free sprinkles, and then to coat them, you'll just roll each of them in those sprinkles. Into a blender bottle, you're gonna add 1 cup of milk. Here I'm using Fairlife, which has 50% less sugar than regular milk, and it is higher in protein. Next, you're gonna add the entire packet of pistachio pudding mix, which is 1 ounce. Now you're gonna add that protein to the blender bottle. Here I'm using a vanilla cream flavor, but any vanilla protein powder will work. And then I have this skinny syrup in a pistachio that I really wanted to try in this recipe. It came out great, so I highly recommend. If you don't have this, I would substitute a liquid stevia or some other sweetener. And then you're just gonna top it off with Fairlife to that 16-ounce line, since that is what the max fill line is on a Ninja Creami container. And now you will just add that mix into your Ninja Creami container and freeze that overnight for 24 hours. When you're ready to eat your ice cream, you're just gonna put it on the light ice cream setting. Your first round is gonna come out a little powdery looking. Then you just make a hole in the center, add your milk of choice, and then re-spin it. Into a large bowl, you're gonna add 1/4 cup of peanut butter. As you can see, it is really liquidy, but that's just because it is a natural organic peanut butter. Next, you're gonna add 1/4 cup of monk fruit golden sweetener, which is similar to a brown sugar. However, monk fruit is a natural sweetener, and this is a monk fruit erythritol blend. Next, you're gonna add 1/2 of a cup of protein powder, again, vanilla protein powder. And then you're gonna add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. All right, and now you will just add a half a cup of blended cottage cheese to the bowl. I think Greek yogurt should work as well. You're gonna have to let me know in the comments if you end up trying that. And then just go ahead and give that a good mix. Once it ends up like a dough-like consistency, you're gonna add 1/4 cup of dark chocolate chips to the mix. Now that we got the chocolate chips all mixed in, they are good to be scooped onto a liner. You can either use a silicone liner on your cookie sheet or a grease pan will work as well. And then you will bake those cookies at 350 degrees for about 10 to 14 minutes. It does end up making around 11 to 12 cookies. My first batch were a little bit crispier than I intended, but the second batch ended up being just perfect golden brown. All right, starting off with dry ingredients, you're gonna need 1 cup of oat flour. You can get oat flour straight from the store, or you can always blend up some oats. Once it gets to a fine powder similar to a flour, you know it is ready to go. For this recipe, you will need 2 large bowls, one for the wet ingredients and one for the dry ingredients, as well as a sifter. Now that we have that cup of oat flour, go ahead and add that to the bowl and sifter. Next, you're gonna add 1/2 cup of vanilla whey protein powder, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then you're just gonna sift all those dry ingredients. This will make a nice consistency for our batter. Once it starts to get to the point where you can't really get any more, I just use a spoon and get as much through the sifter as I can, and then I just toss the rest of it. As you can see, it's a nice fine sifted flour. For the wet ingredients, you're gonna do 1/4 cup of coconut oil. My cup is pretty packed high, so keep that in mind. And then you're gonna pop that in the microwave so that it is liquid. Next, you're gonna add 1/2 cup of pure maple syrup. Next, you're gonna add 1 full egg. And then here I am adding that melted coconut oil. And last but not least, you're gonna do 1/3 cup of milk of choice. And then you're just gonna give that a really good whisk. Now we're gonna add those wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. You're just gonna slowly add that in and mix it slightly. Once it is all mixed well, you're going to let that rest for 5 minutes just to let that baking powder activate. All right, now I'm just gonna use some coconut oil and spray those silicone liners. And then you will scoop the batter into them all. Here I'm just adding them to a cupcake maker that makes them pretty fast, but you can also use an oven, of course. These are my first batch of cupcakes. They're a little bit underdone, and then my second batch is a little overdone, so I would meet in the middle of 10 to 12 minutes or so. Next, we're gonna work on that frosting. We're gonna make a cream cheese frosting, so you'll use 1 8-ounce cream cheese, 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter, 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, and then with your hand mixer, you're gonna give that a good mix. Next, you're gonna add 1 cup of Swerve Confectioners, which is a sugar-free powdered sugar. Try to add this slower than I did. I have a fairly small bowl that I'm mixing this in, so I didn't want it to go flying. Next, just add a dash of salt. I'm seeing it's a pretty thick frosting, which is fine if you like it like that. I'm just gonna add a little bit of milk. It should look like this. And then I'm just gonna add that frosting into a frosting bag. It's easiest if you put the frosting bag into a cup or a mug. As you can see, this frosting is still super thick. If you want to make it less thick, you can always add a little bit more milk. The way it is here, it'll hold whatever shape you want, and it tastes super good.